Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft ping, sealing me alone with the most powerful man in the company. My heart hammered against my ribs as CEO James Harrington's cologne filled the small space. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've tried to forget that night and I failed." His eyes met mine in the mirrored wall, and I knew in that moment that everything was about to change. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more captivating content that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support means everything. I never expected to find myself in this position. 6 months earlier, I was just another marketing associate at Meridian Enterprises, trying to make ends meet with my entry-level salary while paying off student loans. The company was going through a major restructuring, and rumors of layoffs circulated through every department like a virus. Each morning, I'd arrive at work wondering if today would be my last. That's when I first caught James Harrington's attention. During a company-wide meeting, I'd raised my hand and questioned the efficiency of our new marketing strategy. The room had fallen silent, everyone staring at me in horror. You didn't challenge the CEO's decisions, especially not when jobs were on the line. But instead of firing me on the spot, James had leaned forward, intrigued. "Continue," he'd said. My proposal to redirect our marketing efforts toward sustainability initiatives had apparently impressed him. The next day, I received an email requesting my presence at the executive meeting to elaborate on my ideas. I spent the entire night preparing, fueled by anxiety and ambition in equal measure. The executive meeting changed everything. My presentation was met with skepticism from most of the board members, but James defended my ideas passionately. Afterward, he asked me to stay behind. "You have potential, Sarah," he'd said. "I'd like you to lead this initiative." Just like that, I was promoted to project manager, skipping 3 levels of hierarchy. The resentment from my colleagues was immediate and suffocating. They whispered behind my back, spread rumors about how I'd secured the promotion. Only James's unwavering support kept me going through those difficult weeks. We began working closely together, often staying late at the office to refine the sustainability campaign. James was different in those private meetings, more relaxed, more human than the intimidating figure who commanded boardrooms. He shared stories about his humble beginnings, his struggles to build Meridian from nothing. I found myself sharing too, my dreams, my fears, my life outside the office walls. Then came the night of the company gala. Meridian had secured a major client thanks to our sustainability initiative, and everyone was celebrating. I wore a midnight blue dress I couldn't really afford, determined to look the part of a successful project manager. James found me on the balcony, escaping the noise of the party. "You made this happen," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "To your brilliant mind." We talked for hours as the party continued without us. About books, travel, philosophy, everything except work. When the gala ended, he offered to drive me home. The rain was pouring, and taxis were scarce. I accepted without thinking twice. He parked outside my apartment building, but neither of us moved to end the evening. The rain drummed on the roof of his luxury car, creating a cocoon of intimacy. "I haven't connected with someone like this in years," he confessed. The vulnerability in his voice made my heart ache. What happened next was unexpected. Not a kiss, not a touch, but a confession. James revealed that Meridian was in far more trouble than anyone knew. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and the sustainability project was his last hope to save it, and the jobs of hundreds of employees. He'd been carrying this burden alone for months. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he whispered. "But I trust you, Sarah." I reached for his hand without thinking, offering comfort the only way I knew how. Our fingers intertwined, and for a moment, the power dynamic between us dissolved. We were just 2 people, connecting in the rain-soaked darkness. That night changed our professional relationship. I became his confidant, working tirelessly beside him to save the company. We developed a shorthand, an ability to communicate with just a glance across a crowded room. The rumors about us intensified, but we ignored them, focused entirely on our mission. 3 months of grueling work later, we secured the partnerships that would keep Meridian afloat. The night we signed the final contract, we celebrated alone in his office with takeout and cheap wine, a private victory party. "We did it," I said, raising my paper cup in a toast. "No," he replied, his eyes intense. "You did it. I just had the good sense to listen to you." The atmosphere shifted then, charged with something I couldn't name. James moved closer, his hand brushing mine as he reached for the wine bottle. Our eyes met, and I saw something there that made my breath catch: desire, yes, but also fear. He pulled back suddenly, creating distance between us. "I should go," he said, his voice strained. "It's late." I left his office confused and hurt, wondering if I'd imagined the connection between us. The next day, James was professional but distant. He assigned me to work with other executives, effectively removing me from his immediate circle. I threw myself into my work, trying to ignore the ache of rejection. Weeks passed with minimal interaction between us. I convinced myself that whatever had happened, or almost happened, that night was best forgotten. James was my boss, after all. There were boundaries that shouldn't be crossed, no matter how strong the attraction. Then came the elevator. After a particularly tense board meeting where I'd presented our quarterly results, James asked me to join him for a private discussion. We stepped into the elevator together, and as soon as the doors closed, he turned to me with those words that would change everything: "I've tried to forget that night and I failed." "Which night?" I asked, though I knew exactly which one he meant. "The night I almost kissed you," he said, his voice low. "The night I wanted to tell you that you've become more than just an employee to me." My heart raced as the elevator continued its descent. "Why didn't you?" "Because I'm your boss. Because there are 100 reasons why it would be inappropriate. Because I was afraid of ruining what we've built professionally." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man who always seemed so confident. "And now?" I whispered. The elevator reached the ground floor, but neither of us moved to exit. James reached out and pressed the button to close the doors again. "Now I'm afraid of something else," he said. "I'm afraid of never knowing what might have been." What followed wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was complicated, messy, and fraught with professional challenges. We agreed to keep our relationship private while we figured out what it meant for both of us. James restructured the company hierarchy so that I reported to another executive, removing the direct power imbalance between us. We dated in secret for months, stealing moments together away from the watchful eyes of colleagues. I struggled with doubts: was I just another conquest for a powerful man? Was my career advancement truly based on merit? James had his own fears, that I was with him for professional gain, that our age difference would eventually drive us apart. The truth came out eventually, as truths always do. A colleague spotted us having dinner in a restaurant outside the city. By morning, the entire company knew. The board called an emergency meeting, concerned about potential conflicts of interest and liability issues. I offered my resignation, determined not to be the reason for James's downfall. He refused to accept it. Instead, he did something I never expected: he offered to step down as CEO. "Meridian is stable now," he told the board. "Sarah has proven herself more than capable of leading the sustainability division. If my personal choices compromise the company's reputation, I'll remove myself from the equation." The board was stunned into silence. James Harrington, who had built Meridian from nothing, was willing to walk away, for me. In the end, such drastic measures weren't necessary. The board implemented new policies about disclosure of relationships, and we both underwent ethics training. It wasn't romantic, but it was real, the messy reality of balancing love and career. A year later, James did step down as CEO, but not because he was forced to. He decided to launch a nonprofit focused on corporate sustainability, something he'd become passionate about through our work together. I remained at Meridian, eventually becoming the youngest VP in company history, on my own merit, with my own achievements to back it up. Our relationship weathered the storms of public opinion, professional challenges, and our own insecurities. We learned that love doesn't follow corporate hierarchies or conventional timelines. Sometimes it finds you in rain-soaked cars or silent elevators, in the moments between professional triumphs and personal doubts. Today, as I look across our dining table at James, no longer my boss but my partner in every sense of the word, I think about that whispered confession in the elevator. I've tried to forget that night and I failed. I'm grateful for that failure every day. Life rarely gives us clear paths forward. Sometimes the greatest risks lead to our greatest happiness. Sometimes the lines we're afraid to cross are the very boundaries keeping us from becoming who we're meant to be. If there's one thing I've learned from my journey, it's this: courage isn't the absence of fear, it's recognizing what's worth fighting for, even when you're terrified. James and I were both afraid of ruining what we had professionally. But in the end, we would have lost something far more precious if we'd let fear win. So if you're standing at the edge of your own decision, wondering whether to take that leap of faith, in love, in career, in life, remember that the most meaningful journeys often begin with the scariest first steps. Trust yourself enough to follow your heart, even when your mind is full of doubts. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that explore the complicated, beautiful mess that is human connection. Until next time, remember that some risks are worth taking, and some nights are worth remembering, no matter how hard you try to forget them. The years that followed taught us both about balance, between power and vulnerability, between professional ambition and personal fulfillment. We faced our share of challenges, both public and private. There were still whispers in hallways when we attended company functions together, still raised eyebrows from those who couldn't see beyond the former power dynamic between us. James struggled with his new identity outside of Meridian. After 15 years as CEO, he found himself adrift in the early days of his nonprofit venture. I watched him battle with self-doubt, questioning his worth when stripped of his corporate title. Those were difficult months, filled with late-night conversations and reassurances that went both ways. I reminded him of his vision, his intelligence, his capacity for growth beyond the boardroom. He reminded me that I had always seen him as a person first, not just a position of power. His nonprofit, Green Future Initiative, eventually gained momentum. What began as a small consulting firm helping corporations transition to sustainable practices grew into an influential organization that shaped environmental policy across industries. James found purpose again, perhaps even greater purpose than he'd known at Meridian. He was changing the world, not just a company's bottom line. Meanwhile, my career at Meridian continued to evolve. The sustainability division I led became the company's crown jewel, attracting clients who wanted to align themselves with our progressive values. When I was promoted to executive vice president at 32, there were still those who attributed my success to my relationship with James. I learned to let those comments slide off my back, secure in the knowledge that my results spoke for themselves. We bought a house together in the countryside, a century-old farmhouse with wide windows that filled every room with light. On weekends, we planted gardens and painted walls, creating a sanctuary away from corporate pressures. It was there, among the wildflowers we'd planted together, that James proposed, not with grand gestures or public declarations, but with simple words that acknowledged our unconventional journey. "We've never done things the traditional way," he said, kneeling in the garden with dirt on his knees and a vintage ring in his hand. "But I think that's what makes us work." Our wedding was small and intimate, attended only by those who had supported our relationship from the beginning. My parents, initially skeptical of the 15-year age gap between us, had come to adore James for the way he championed my independence. His sister, who had watched him prioritize Meridian over personal happiness for years, cried tears of joy as we exchanged vows. Life settled into a rhythm that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. We argued about household chores and vacation destinations like any couple, but we also collaborated on environmental initiatives that spanned continents. Our professional lives remained intertwined, though no longer in a hierarchical way. We became equal partners in every sense, each bringing unique strengths to our shared vision for a better world. 3 years into our marriage, we faced our greatest challenge when James was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctor attributed it to years of stress and overwork, the price of his dedication to Meridian. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes, not for the company or for our future, but for the time we might lose together. Those months of medical appointments and lifestyle adjustments shifted our priorities yet again. James stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his nonprofit, focusing instead on mentoring the next generation of environmental leaders. I negotiated a more flexible schedule at Meridian, refusing to repeat James's mistake of putting work before health. I spent decades thinking I was indispensable, James told me one night as we sat on our porch, watching the sunset. But the truth is, companies survive without any single person. What doesn't survive is time, the moments we could have shared, the life we could have built sooner if I hadn't been so afraid of crossing that line with you. His health improved gradually, and with it came a new appreciation for the ordinary moments between us. Morning coffee shared in comfortable silence. Late-night discussions about books we'd both read. The simple pleasure of falling asleep beside someone who knows your fears and loves you anyway. 5 years after that fateful elevator ride, I was offered the position of CEO at Meridian when my predecessor announced his retirement. The board's vote was unanimous, a validation of my leadership that went beyond any connection to James. When I called to tell him the news, he was already opening champagne, having heard through his contacts on the board. "They would be fools not to choose you," he said, his pride evident in every word. "You were always destined for this." The irony wasn't lost on either of us, that I now occupied the position that had once created such a barrier between us. That night, as we celebrated my appointment, James pulled out a small box from his desk drawer. "I've been saving this for the right moment," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a handwritten note, dated the night of the company gala years ago. In James's precise handwriting were the words, "Met someone extraordinary today. She will change everything." "You kept this all this time?" I asked, touched by this glimpse into his thoughts from before our lives had intertwined. "I knew from that first meeting that you were special," he said. "Not just for Meridian, but for me. I just didn't know how to reconcile those feelings with my position. As I prepare to take the helm at Meridian next month, I often reflect on the journey that brought us here. How a single question in a company meeting led to a promotion, which led to late nights working side by side, which led to a confession in the rain and eventually to a life together. How the professional boundaries we were so afraid of crossing ultimately led us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and each other. James and I still attend the annual company gala together, though now in different roles. Sometimes, we slip away to the same balcony where we first connected beyond work. We stand there, overlooking the city lights, and remember how far we've come from that night. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked him at last year's gala. "Taking the risk with me when there was so much at stake?" He took my hand, the same way he had in his car that rainy night years ago. "The only thing I regret is waiting so long to tell you the truth. That I tried to forget that night and failed. That I tried to pretend my feelings for you were purely professional and failed at that too. Life doesn't always give us clear paths or easy choices. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most complicated circumstances. Sometimes the people who change our lives enter through doors we never expected to open. If you're standing at your own crossroads, wondering whether to follow your heart or play it safe, remember that courage often looks like vulnerability. It looks like admitting what you can't forget, what you've tried and failed to ignore. It looks like trusting that some connections are worth the risk, worth the whispers, worth the uncertainty. Because sometimes, on the other side of that risk is a life more beautiful than you ever dared to imagine. A life where elevator confessions lead to garden proposals. Where professional respect deepens into personal admiration. Where trying and failing to forget becomes the beginning of a story worth remembering. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your engagement helps bring more stories like this one to life, stories about the complicated, beautiful, messy reality of human connection. Until we meet again in another story, remember that some failures are actually the universe's way of leading us exactly where we need to be.